Center. This concept for me was introduced much late in my career, and principles which I told you before, the system of those five elements from weight through weight, spine, center, lines, and then we go into the attraction part, was developed for me in a way where I actually experienced it myself, and when I started to see how people train kids as well. So we started first of the weight awareness, then we tell them at the same time, almost telling them to keep our posture, and you hear it all the time. There is a reason for it, right? Then actually when you teach kids, you talk about lines a lot. However, I switched it. I switched it to center because very often you see that type of a chicken position in all the kids. That not really attractive, and only later on the concept, like when you started from a very young age, it's about 14, 16, maybe earlier, you start to kind of recognize the concept of the center. I got familiar with it really, really well when I was in my university, and we had a whole subject called biomechanics. It was very interesting because we got to watch movies in different type of color. They were showing through basically like ER. They were showing what's happening to his body, and they had like numerical values towards each body part, and the explanation was that each body part actually has a center. So when you think about it, when you take your pen, it has a center. When you break it in two, then each of those parts has a center. So that's a very simple concept to grasp, right? So when I'm standing here as a human being, my center of gravity is going to be right here. We're going to talk about just that because we on this earth. So we're talking about center of the gravity. It's going to be lower, and everything else was supposed to move from that center. But there's a caveat. So we not only saw the images. We not only saw the images which were successful jumps, but we saw really bad ones, very unsuccessful ones. And what was interesting there is what was happening to the body in that moment. So the body was either tensing too much or it was relaxing too much. And this is when I got introduced to the concept of the egg, boiled egg. So when you take an egg, and when you take a raw egg and when you take a boiled egg, most of you know that when you spin the raw egg, it doesn't want to spin really. But when you take a boiled egg, which is exactly the same thing, nothing changed, right? There's no tricks. When you spin the boiled egg, it suddenly spins well. Why? Because inside of it, right, everything is boiled and everything is sturdy, rather than when you take a raw egg and it's all relaxed. So there is nothing to grasp and there is no motion happening. So when you do that, when you think about this, is in relation to your body, the 9 out of 10, the things I see that we're tensing one part and we don't really use anything else. So one of the difficult part was for every gentleman is to do the beginning, that position. So when I stand right here, or for most of the ladies, when you actually walk, you start to drop the side. What's happening is there's no muscles actually involved, so you start to fall. Even so, your spine might be active, your hands are active, but there's the other part which is completely disengaged, and in this case, you start to, you start to fall. Same happens with turns. You start to do turns and you start to fall down, for example, versus hold your body to the center. And this is like to have the tone in those muscles. In general, when you start dancing, your body needs to be toned right away. So you cannot start in the same position. And this is the most biggest thing we see when you see beginners or the wedding couple, right? So they start to do it very all relaxed, and it doesn't really work well. So when we dance, that stuff, right? So like the body, like the muscles everywhere, they're supposed to be toned much more. So that kind of ensures me that I have this starting position. Like when you start your engine, the engine never drops below a certain point. It has a 0 when a car is off, but it never drops below, let's say, 650. So, and this is the same with our body. When we want to dance, when we start dancing, it has to be toned right away. It has to move with us right away and respond. And if it's relaxed, if certain part gets relaxed, especially I see that a lot, or I see that like that a lot, then it becomes very problematic. So the last final thing I say here is that we have to think of a crisscross. So when I'm crossing my leg, right? So when I'm crossing my leg, there is a center I'm crossing. We cannot shift it, all right? So I have to cross it around my leg. In this case, yes, I will have to twist in order to keep my center in. Try this as an exercise. And when you're placing your hand here and you start to move and the center starts to shift away from you, that becomes a problem. So when you twist, when you go neutral position, you're closing the center, then you're placing your leg. So you have to use quite a bit of your body to hold that center together. Same for another leg. So I want to move in a way that one side moves back, another one moves forward, in order for me to keep that center. That's not happening most of the time. We have those bellies and so on. This is the concept of center for you. So you have to think of that when you move. There's one point. If I will strip everything off and I will have to draw you as a movement point, right, as a vector, it's going to be the point and the arrow, and that's going to be your center. Simple explanation here is the center is in the middle of your hips. 2 fingers below the belly button. This is where your lower abs are. And it's right in the middle of the body there. So this is where you are toned, and this is where all the movement is happening. So think about that concept that, number one, you never can be relaxed. If you feel you're losing balance, it means somewhere something is not engaged. And when you dance and when you travel, you always rotate and make a step around that center.